Hey everybody, it's Tina here. It's a beautiful Sunday and you can hear the birds chirping in the background. So it would be a very nice backdrop to my next video series, which is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. This is going to be an interactive series where I'll need your help in solving a case. And so before we begin, we have to do a very important step, which is getting our beverage. It's a hot day out here, so I'm going to pour myself a nice drink. In Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, you're taking on the role of a member in Sherlock's unofficial gang called the Baker Street Irregulars. This is a team created by Sherlock himself to keep him informed on the word from the street and to back him up in his investigations. In this game, you'll be presented with 10 cases. For each case, you'll have a series of leads to follow. You're going to have a map of London, a London directory, and a local newspaper. You'll also have a list of allies with a variety of qualifications who will help you in your investigations. In the box, other than the rulebook, you're going to find a London directory. The London directory is very helpful because it lists all of the people that live in London and their corresponding addresses. So by referencing this, we would know that Franklin Packer lives at 78 WC. At the back of the directory, there is also a list of locations like hotels, parks, banks, and so you can locate where the various places are and go to there. The game comes with a large London map. The places on the map are numbered. So in doing your investigations, you may have to reference the map and these numbers to figure out distances, to figure out what's around, a certain location and so on. These are the newspapers. There are 10 of them, one for each case, and the date of the newspaper is usually the date after whatever incident that you're solving. This is another tool you need to reference during the case to find clues to solving the case. Note that in later cases, the ones that are further in the future, you may have to reference past newspapers for leads. So that's a very interesting mechanic that's built into the game. Finally, there are 10 cases. And for this playthrough, for this interactive playthrough, we'll be working together on the first case, the munitions magnate, which happened on March 12, 1888. This is how a case works. There is usually a couple pages of story to read through to set the tone and to understand sort of what's the background of the case. So there may be names in this first couple page, places that they mention that we want to go to. So for example, the murder could have taken place in a certain restaurant and you might want to head to the restaurant to investigate, in which case you would reference the London directory, look up the restaurant, look up the location, and reference that particular passage in the book. So for example, excuse the airplane. For example, let's say your lead takes you to 40 Northwest, then you flip to the book, find this passage, and just read through it to see what it tells you. The objective is to solve the case using the least number of leads. So you're trying to essentially solve it in the least amount of steps. And you're trying to beat Sherlock himself. So if Sherlock solves this case in 15 leads, 15 steps, you want to try to beat him and do it in less than that. There are obviously solutions at the back, but one very important part of the game is after you think you've figured out the solution to the case, you have to flip to the back, and I'll probably do another one so you don't see the questions, but you go to the back of the book and there's going to be 2 sections of questions, part 1 and part 2. Each question will have a point associated to it. So for example, this first question is 25 points. Second question is also 25 points. Essentially, you want to go through the questions one by one and see if you can correctly answer them. If you can, you would get the associated points. Once you've figured out all of the scores, you would tally them up, add up all the points, and then you would do some simple math depending on whether you have more leads or less leads to Sherlock. If you have more leads in Sherlock, you would subtract 5 points. If you have less leads in Sherlock, you would add 5 to your score. You'll thus get the final score, and Sherlock's score is always 100 points. That way you can compare to see whether you beat Sherlock or not. I should also mention that we have a list of allies. So these are people, experts, that we can always go to regardless of which case we're on. Some of these folks are the head coroner at a hospital. He does autopsies. H.R. Murray, he's a criminologist. Scotland Yard, the cops. Lomax, librarian, and Sherlock Holmes himself. So if you're really stuck, you can go talk to Sherlock and he can put you back on track with advice. Let's talk a little bit about how the interactive gameplay would work. I will obviously share the backstory with you, and then I will start the game by doing a few, the most obvious leads. After that, I will end the video. I will have the various tools like the newspapers, the map, and the London directory out for you guys. And I'll figure out a way to do that so it's not too difficult to follow. I'll probably take a picture and include it in the back of the video. But you'll have all the tools you need. And then I'll open it up for suggestions as to how we should proceed. If you have a suggestion as to where we should go next, who we should talk to next, put it in the comments below. You can also read through the comments to see whether there's a solution that matches your thinking, and give them a thumbs up, give them a like, and I will select the comment with the most likes to proceed in the next video. Case 1. The Munitions Magnate, March 12, 1888. Despite the lateness of the winter, March is still roaring like a lion. In fact, just as we alight from our cab in front of 221B Baker, a derby hat skitters by, propelled by the fierce wind. In close pursuit is none other than Wiggins, chief of the Baker Street Irregulars, and after Dr. Watson, Sherlock Holmes' most able assistant. Before we can join in the chase, Wiggins managed to halt the flying bit of finery with a deft stroke of his umbrella. Cramming it squarely on his head, he saunters back towards us. "Hello," he says cheerily. "It would appear that Mr. Holmes is summoning the troops. Shall we?" With the point of his umbrella, a very versatile tool it appears, Wiggins stabs the doorbell. It is several moments before Mrs. Hudson answers. After a brief exchange of greetings, she sends us on our way to Holmes' apartment. Above, we find Holmes and Dr. Watson sitting at a table engaged in earnest conversation with a gentleman in his late 40s, expensively dressed yet somewhat rumpled in appearance. "Warm yourselves," says Holmes, "and I will explain my reasons for calling you out on such a bitter morning." Coats and hats are immediately shed. There is a distant pop as Wiggins removes his derby, and a rush is made for the fireplace. In due course, introductions are made, and the gentleman is identified as Mr. Richard Allen, brother of the late Courtney Allen, president of the Grant Arms Company. "It is the recent death of Mr. Allen's late brother," says Holmes, "that occasions his visit to us. Briefly, Courtney Allen was found shot to death in an alley behind his office on the evening of March 9th at approximately 7 p.m. by the constable on patrol. Scotland Yard has put the crime down as a simple robbery by a person or persons unknown, largely to the fact that the victim's wallet was found empty near the body and his gold pocket watch was missing. Mr. Allen was just telling us a bit about his brother when you arrived." "Please continue, Mr. Allen." "Well, Courtney was a dynamic individual, always busy, forever on the move. Yet he had the unique ability to make 10 minutes spent with you seem like an hour. So complete was his attention to you. Of course, his charm worked like a magic potion on the ladies." "You said he was married?" asked Watson with a raised eyebrow. "Oh yes, poor Beatrice." "Was he involved in an In an affair at the time of his death? Asked Wiggins. Yes, I believe he was, but I have no clue as to who the lady might have been. You see, the night before he was killed, I popped round to his office at about 5:30 and managed to coax him to supper at Keen's. We were there for a short while when Courtney begged to leave. He indicated that he had an important meeting and said,
Auf Wiedersehen,
and winked. That wink meant a woman. Is the company financially sound? Asked Watson. Oh, quite. A fine investment for anyone's portfolio. You see, the company was founded as a small gun shop some 70-odd years ago by our great-uncle, Thaddeus Grant. It catered to a very elite clientele. Ah, most of the chaps in the regiment were equipped with pistols from Grant, nods Watson. Why, Braxton, you've heard me speak of Braxton, Holmes. He had a pair of the finest dueling pistols. Yes, Watson, pray continue, Mr. Allen. Courtney, always fascinated by firearms, apprenticed himself to our uncle. When Thaddeus died in 1873, he bequeathed the business to Courtney. While maintaining the original shop and its tradition, Courtney expanded into the international arms trade. With loans and the sale of public stock, he was able to build a plant at 12 Deverell Street for the manufacture of heavy ordnance. Today, the firm is debt-free and very profitable. Of course, a drop in the share price occurred with the news of my brother's death. And who has ascended to the presidency? Adds Watson. Courtney's picked successor, Philip Marlowe, the second vice president. Oh, and why not the senior vice president? Young Lord Ragland, who runs the Deverell Street plant, is a brilliant technician, but a most inept businessman. Who inherits your brother's stock? His wife, Beatrice. Now, I think we might examine the effects found with your brother. Holmes turns his attention to a large briefcase and a large brown envelope. It looks as if some sharp object has been used on it, comments Watson, referring to a large gouge on the leather of the briefcase. Yes, and it's practically brand new. I gave it to Courtney for his last birthday, January 6th. As you can see, it is locked. The police found it that way. Courtney kept the key on a chain attached to his watch fob. The watch, of course, was stolen. Holmes retrieves a long piece of wire from the coal scuttle. After gaining Allen's permission, he inserts it into the lock, and with a quick flick of the wrist, springs the lock open. He pulls out 2 folders for our examination. Each is filled with company papers and is coded to indicate its contents. One marked MBC, for instance, concerns various coal mine leases. Another marked S-87-V contains a listing of sales to the U.S. government during the preceding year. Holmes then empties the contents of the envelope onto the table. The inventory includes spectacles and case, a ruby ring, a gold wedding band, a keychain with keys, an empty wallet, a small notebook, and a note. For those of you just listening to audio, look up to the screen now. I've posted a picture of the note that's in the book. Seizing on the notebook, Holmes observes, "Can you tell us who Captain Egan might be, Mr. Allen?" "I've never heard of the name." "And Billy?" "Billy is Courtney's secretary, William Linhart." Holmes compares the writing in his notebook with that of the note. They appear to be identical. He nods and says, "I believe we have enough to begin our investigation." After Allen has gone, Wiggins comments that his hand gestures were most intriguing. Combining infinite subtlety with tremendous force, it is easy to imagine that he has no trouble making his wishes known on the floor of the London Stock Exchange. "I don't recall Allen giving out his occupation," says Watson, puzzled. No, replies Wiggins, but certain phrases he spoke, coupled with the pencil notations on his left shirt cuff, stock prices for sure, led me to conclude that he was a stockbroker. Bravo, Wiggins! Well, Watson, our young man has come a long way since the days when you described him as a dirty little street urchin, eh? Thank you, Mr. Holmes, but after all, I was taught by the master. True, says Holmes matter-of-factly, quite true. So after the backstory, we have a faint idea of what's going on, and I've just written out the folks that were mentioned and the relationship to the victim, Courtney Allen. So we have Lady X, potentially. We have Richard, who's the guy that's asking us for help. Captain Egan, no idea who he is. Beatrice, which is the wife of the victim. And then we have 3 people from the company that Courtney owns, which is Grant Arms. And I've also jotted some notes as to the details of the case, including some of the locations that were mentioned. So we have Grant Arms Company that we could potentially check out. We have the plant on 12 Devereux Street. We have a number of things that was in the briefcase, and I'm not really sure what they are. And so maybe we could look around and go to these places, or see what these are. So as you can see, we have a lot of options. I guess the trick of the game is figuring out which are the important leads and which are the ones to throw you off. I think for the first lead that will follow, I was thinking we should probably go talk to the folks, one of these folks. Maybe speak to Lord Raglan, because he wasn't promoted to presidency. Maybe there's something going on. Or we can speak to Philip, who has all the motivation in the world to kill off Courtney. But let's start with Lord Raglan to see what's up. So to do that, we'll go to our directory. We flip, and it's by alphabetical order, in the order of last names. So let's go to R. Here's R. And then we'll look for Ragland. And here we have Ragland right here. Lord Henry Ragland. He's at 56 Southwest. Let's go to the book and go to 56 Southwest. The book is organized in areas, so SWs would all be in the same section. And when you read these, try not to look at any other locations because it would give you extra clues. 56 SW. Lord Raglan's man, Bunting, admits us to the residence and shows us into the study to wait. We are almost as impressed by Lord Raglan's establishment as we are with Lord Raglan himself when he arrives. At 30, he is the picture of the English gentleman, impeccably groomed, with a grace and style at once attractive and forbidding. The introductions were completed. He separates himself from us by walking to the other side of the desk. Seating himself, he asks us to begin. Before we can, however, he notices a small envelope on the desk and immediately calls for Bunting. Drummond's has slipped up again. See that this is posted immediately. Excuse me, gentlemen. Debit where a credit should be, or some such. Please begin. On the night of Mr. Allen's murder, he had an appointment with Captain Egan. Yes, the purchasing officer for naval ordnance at the Admiralty. We were working on a secret project for the Admiralty, and Courtney was concerned about one of the engineers, Richard Camp, being a security risk. We discussed it that morning. I gave no credence to the idea. Lord Raglan pauses to reach into a small silver box. From it, he draws forth a cigarette which has a B&H printed on it in gold leaf. He inserts it into an ebony cigarette holder, lights it, and leans back. Without our prompting, he continues. No, no, Camp is a fine fellow, but as a concession to Egan, I removed him from the project and assigned him elsewhere. Tragic, Courtney's death. To think that I had intended to stop by the office that evening, but was forced to work late at the plant. If I had, perhaps a thief would have thought twice before tackling 2 of us. Were you disappointed about not being named president? You were, after all, senior vice president. Not a bit of it. I am quite happy in my work in the technical areas. Administrative matters do not interest me. Besides, one of Marlowe's conditions of employment was that he succeeds Courtney when Courtney retired. Of course, that would not have been for many years. Thank you, Lord Ragland. I think that was quite helpful. Lord Ragland told us who Captain Egan is, purchasing officer at the Admiralty. And we also found out about this person called Richard Camp, who's an engineer at the plant. Another new piece of information is that Lord Ragland was smoking a cigarette from B&H, and I looked up in the London Directory. Under the section of tobacconists, we do have a company with initials B&H, which is Benson and Hedges. So this could potentially be a clue, or potentially not be a clue. At this point, it does sound like Lord Ragland does not have a motive to kill Courtney Allen. The other suspects that we have that are sort of high on the list are Philip Marlowe, Billy, William Linhart, and Captain Egan. So these are potentially people we could speak to next. I should also mention that there is a location, the Spaniard here. This location was in this note that was in the briefcase, and it says tonight at 10 p.m. and with the initials AH. We don't know who this person is. So this could be a potential lead as well. And I just looked up in directory. It is a location under inns. So this is an inn. Recall that this Captain Egan appeared on this notebook that was found in Courtney Allen's briefcase, and it said Captain Egan 8:30 p.m. March 9. That's the evening Courtney Allen was killed. I'm wondering why they were reading that evening. And so let's go talk to Captain Egan. Captain Egan, he is the purchasing officer at the Admiralty. So, where is Admiralty? A big part of this game is finding out where things are, because without the address, you can't locate the passage. So I just looked through the directory, and I couldn't find a listing for the Admiralty. After some detective work on the map, I finally found this location. And so you might need some glasses for this exercise, because boy, it requires a lot of reading and a lot of attention to detail. The Admiralty is in this corner of the map in the southwest area of London, and it is right here. Yeah, you can't see it. See what I mean? Right here. That's pretty small. 10 southwest. Captain Egan is a small bulldog of a man. He paces back and forth behind a massive oak desk as if it were a quarter-deck railing. 8 months ago, Allen came to his office with the designs for a new naval gun. Revolutionary in concept. Can't say much about it. Most secret, don't you know? The design was approved and monies advanced for its development. Can you tell us anything about the meeting Mr. Allen was to have had with you on the evening of his murder? The captain barks out a name, unintelligible to us, and an aging lieutenant, long since beached upon the promotionless shores of paperwork, scurries into the room. Bring me the Grant Arms Company file. Allen sent me a wire this morning. Quite vague. Close-mouthed fellow when all was said and done. He was worried about security for project number 10. I know, but wouldn't say much about it. His responsibility. He would take care of it. Course, I put some of my men on it anyway. The lieutenant returns with the file and is dismissed, for the time being, back into oblivion. The captain shows us first the wire. It reads, Meet tonight 8:30, your office. Call out the guard. Pounce at 10. C. Allen. He then shows us a detailed list of the activities of Richard Camp, a development engineer on project number 10. Well, as you can see, he was always bringing boxes and bundles to the French embassy. Emile Zobar, French military attaché, has his office at the embassy. So you believe that Mr. Allen's wire implied he had information implicating Camp in a security breach of Project Number 10? I did. Still do. But Lord Ragland, head of the project, assured me that Allen's security fears were unfounded. We met 2 days after Allen's unfortunate death. As a precaution, he told me, he would remove Camp from the project. Since the conversation, I have concentrated my efforts on Zobar, von Schulenburg, Del Guerra, and Mashkov. Their governments would all have great interest in our new gun. So far, my men have uncovered nothing. Thank you, Captain. I think that was a pretty good lead. We have lots of new information. So Captain Egan said that there's this new naval gun. Courtney suspected that there was a security breach. Potentially is Richard Camp. And from that note he sent to Captain Egan, it sounds like they were gonna pounce on somebody at 10 p.m. So, very, very suspicious. This Richard Camp. Also, there were a couple of names Captain Egan mentioned. So these are the 4 names. Emil, Zobar, and then the other guys. I'm guessing these are representatives from various countries that are in London, with embassies in London, and they potentially have an interest in this naval gun, because a naval gun with new technology, revolution technology, would be beneficial to whatever country that acquires it. So it makes sense that these other countries and these other reps would have some sort of interest in this new technology. The hypothesis now is Richard Camp is probably selling information to the French. Potentially Courtney was killed because of that. We don't know. That's sort of my initial hypothesis. It is now time for your turn. What do you think of this case so far? What do you think happened? Who do you think killed Courtney Allen? And where or who should we talk to next? Don't forget, we have some locations that we haven't gone to, like the plant, the Grant Arms Company. We have the cigarette place, B&H. We have some of these locations, like the Spaniard Inn. I don't know what this Clarkson Sun is, but Courtney Allen ordered some sort of Victoria hat there, so that might be a potential location. So there are some other locations that we could potentially go to, but I would think the strongest leads would be here for now, these folks here for now. So at the end of this video, you'll find images of the tools, so the newspaper, the London Directory. You'll also find my notes. I would like you to write in the comments where we should go next, and you can do, let's say we do 2 locations. Pick 2 locations of where you think I should go next, number 1 and then number 2. And if your answer is already in the comments, just give that answer a like, and then we'll proceed with the comment that has the most likes in the next video. Thank you so much for participating, and I shall see you guys in the next episode of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.